In early 1995, Sega released the original Panzer Dragoon. In a sea of bad press surrounding its Saturn system, this entirely new game created just for the platform would become one of the few positives to come out of that first year. Gamers had respected its finely crafted world, impressive sound and visuals, and its arcade-inspired gameplay. Sega knew the studio responsible for the title, Team Andromeda, had been onto something special. 2 games would go into production. One would eventually become Panzer Dragoon Saga, but first Team Andromeda wanted to create a prequel that told another part of the story. That game would go on to become Panzer Dragoon 2, Zwei. The story of the Panzer Dragoon games can be quite confusing. While the basic premise appears to be a dragon trying to save the world, there are all kinds of things going on beneath the surface. As I mentioned, despite this being called a Part 2, it actually takes place nearly 2 decades before the original. It starts out in a small village in the middle of nowhere, with a young man named Lundy discovering that his baby Kulia is demonstrating some rather unusual traits. The superstitious village he lives in usually goes all crucible on these creatures when they are born different, killing them immediately. Lundy refuses and hides this baby away so he can raise him in secret. Little does Lundy know that his newfound friend has been inhabited by the Heresy Dragon program, a remnant left over from the past that defies an ancient being called Saturn. Knowing the creature's purpose is to ultimately destroy him, Saturn sends Shellkoof, a giant floating battleship capable of immense destruction, to seek and eliminate the fledgling dragon and all those around him. The story of course gets deeper and has much more context across the next 2 games, but let's sum up here. This is Lundy, our dragon rider. This is Laggy, our dragon, and this is Shellkoof, the floating enemy generator you need to destroy. For a deeper explanation of its story, characters, and the other games in the series, I recommend you hit up the fan site Panzer Dragoon Legacy and its excellent database of game-related information.
Leia Lufisa Eutius Enarcheroe Luciana Lucianas Metuil Forus Imperia Keskel de Taruka Tum Enamitas Nomitaitua.
Like the original, Panzer II is basically an on-rails 3D shoot-'em-up that allows you to fight in 360 degrees around your dragon. You have your hand blaster that is capable of rapid fire, and you have your dragon's ability to lock onto enemies and send a powerful blast of lasers that do even more damage. Enemies come at you from every angle. Some can be shot down before they are a danger, others shoot projectiles at you that need to be taken out, and every stage, of course, has a massive creature you need to deal with at the end. There are a couple of major differences presented here that were not in the original game. First, you have the ability to go different paths now. Some stages have obvious deviations from the main path, others rather well hidden. There are even a few stages that have different routes within the different routes. There is also now an evolution system in place that allows your dragon to grow and change into different versions based on your choices and performance. At the end of each stage, you are given points for the routes you choose, finishing the stage, and how well you did. These points add up and determine how your dragon grows. There are more than half a dozen variations. You also get the new Berserk attack that, once charged up, unleashes crazy damage potential with automatic fire and an invincibility while you're in it. Needless to say, the formula established in the first game got some much needed variety here, and the replay value for those looking for the best shoot down percentages and evolution points was well in excess of simply finishing the game once. It was the maturation of the shoot 'em up genre, a game for a new generation looking to break free from the simple mechanics that had been part of these kinds of games for well over a decade. To those on the outside, it was little more than a simple arcade game, but to those of us who own Saturns, it was so very much more. Take pretty much everything you saw in the first game and it has been improved here. It runs smoother, the textures are better, and it employs numerous techniques that create a world unlike anything you had seen at that point. Whereas the first game was sparse and empty on many of its levels, Panzer II is bursting with life and complexity. Even on its more barren stages, you get elaborate strongholds filled with towers and enemy vehicles, and the more lively stages are just bursting at the seams with trees, overgrowth, and wildlife. Even the caves and inside of vessels are beautifully rendered with unique designs and architecture. Special effects like water look particularly stunning and suffer none of the dithering often seen in other games. There's also an impressive use of scale here. Canyon walls tower over you and your dragon, making you feel small, and your advance on the enemy makes you realize the enormity of the task at hand. While Team Andromeda went above and beyond here with the engine, there are still some unsightly elements rearing their ugly heads. Play this via RGB on a monitor, and many of the smoke trails are mesh effects that mar an otherwise stellar 5th generation showcase. Composite on a CRT will indeed hide these quite well, but it's a trade-off for reduced sharpness and overall image quality. Still, this is a great looking Saturn game with a lot of variety in its stage graphics, great special effects, and a performance that remains solid most of the time. It holds up well against the best looking games on the platform, and certainly is a showpiece for the Saturn's 3D polygon abilities when properly harnessed. One area where the original game excelled was its truly fantastic music. It's as memorable as any other aspect of that game, and the second game here wouldn't be nearly as appealing itself if it didn't have an epic score to play to as well. Lucky for us, Sega put together a dream team of composers that had worked on the likes of Magic Knight Rayearth and a bunch of the Sonic titles, and the end result is a fantastic score that rivals the best of that generation. Incredibly atmospheric, it projects its will onto each and every stage, telling you as much about the environment as your eyes do. It sets the tone and rhythm of every encounter, and very much like the original, it conveys a powerful range of emotion that doesn't just assist in the telling of this tale, but contributes directly to its weight and power. Sometimes the audio presentation of a game is so well done, it just wouldn't be the same without it. That definitely is the case here, and I recommend it so highly, I consider the OST mandatory listening. While a lot of the stuff you see about Sega and its Saturn is spoken of in the negative vacuum of failure and disappointment, the Panzer Dragoon games were a bold, bright, and positive spot that has an endearing legacy to this very day. Its story about a dragon chained to destiny, its riders who became mixed up in that journey, and its uniquely presented world and backstory all make this a journey that thrilled and entertained many of us lucky enough to take it. The second game here was a technical marvel on a system that supposedly couldn't do 3D engines worth a damn. Further proof that had the Saturn been around a few more years, we likely would have seen some incredible stuff. With the recent release of Panzer Dragoon Remake, developer Megapixel Studio now turns its attention to remaking the second one. While they have shown nothing of that work, I'm hoping the growing pains they have experienced with the first project makes this one a much more smoother ride for us. A resurgence of the Panzer Dragoon IP doesn't mean just more remakes, but perhaps a brand new entry in the long run. Lord knows the 17 years and counting of the last release has been a heck of a long wait, And if any Sega series deserves a resurrection, it's definitely this one. I'm Sega Lord X, thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you next time.